These fluorescent lights blind my eyes, and every day is another compromise of all that takes a backseat in this society. My integrity, my ability, but there's a silent song inside my head. It's all that separates me from the walking dead.
I am Nil Gravity, and welcome to Initial Reaction. We just had our vote on the SOGI ordinance in Springfield, Missouri. The city started a task force to include LGBT in anti-discrimination policy in the city. They're especially concerned with housing and people being fired. It was suspended pretty much right away because they got 2,000 signatures together, and then we voted for repeal on Tuesday. And a lot of people were feeling pretty down about it, and they had a big rally downtown where there was like 1,000 people who showed up to that. It came really close. There's a lot of issues involved here with this specific vote, because we had all the power of all the mega churches in the area and the religious community in general. We're sometimes referred to as the buckle of the Bible Belt, though there's a couple other places that try to make the same claim. But they threw everything they had at this, and they only won by 854 votes, and almost 700 of that was in 3 precincts that are on the very edge of town. Yeah, it was pretty much razor thin as far as politics goes. It's captured my imagination in a lot of ways. I've done a lot of things to try to affect change. It was interesting to see the political will out there, and I'm a poll worker, so I saw a lot of people who normally don't vote come in, and the one guy who's he's a super judge, he was telling me he didn't recognize a lot of the people that were in there, and he knows like everybody because his church is in our precinct, and he's been at that same station for like 10 years. So yeah, he knows like everybody that comes in there to vote, and he saw a lot of new faces. And while I'm sure a lot of them were for repealing the protections, the crowd was less gray than it normally is. We're in a pretty gray precinct. One thing that came up because of this is a lot of people think that voting is pointless, and when it comes to voting for politicians, they might have a point. Overall, lobbyists and influence still trump political party, and the 2 political parties have a lock on the system, which I should do an episode about, because I think that actually violates the spirit of the First Amendment, if not the letter of the First Amendment. But on laws like this and value votes, so while the politicians might not matter, voting for issues definitely matters. Like, this came really close. I couldn't find the exact number of precincts, but I think it's somewhere between 60 and 80 precincts in Springfield. So if we could have gotten 15 more people to vote no to repeal, we would have won. Yeah, so if you haven't voted in a while and a big issue's coming up, I heavily recommend going into the county clerk and finding out, because they have it on their computers who's registered, and do it before the filing date, so that way you can make sure they get it. And here in Springfield, it's at the courthouse. If you're in there, just go in and fill out a card, or ask them, like, if you're there for some other reason, because the registering through the driver's license thing, apparently they have a little box next to all the information you fill out to register to vote, and basically you fill out the information if you want to vote, but if you check that box, they will not send in the application. So until they change the wording on that box or they eliminate it entirely, we're taught in training for poll working that there's just going to be a ton of people that thought they registered when they got their license and did not. But I should probably talk about a little bit about what this. Unfortunately, this vote was pretty much a symbolic one, because even though it would have extended protections to it, after the vote, I realized some things about it for this specific one. If a business is accused of discrimination, they'll be investigated. Imagine how hard that is to prove. Only in very extreme cases would this ever be enforced. That just goes, and along with the whole fact that nearly all the debate was over whether transgender people could use either bathroom when that wasn't in the language of the bill at all, or what proposal, I don't know. Just looking at it somewhat, it's been a long time since I was in Bible study, but the Bible says, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. That's, if the law says you have to do something, you're not going to lose heaven points for complying with the law. I can understand for something like abortion or whatever that if, if a doctor didn't want to perform an abortion because of religious reasons, I could understand an extreme example like that. But, catering or selling, offering somebody shelter, the Bible says far more about being a good neighbor than it does about condemning homosexuality. And arguably, the passages about homosexuality are actually about pedophiles. It's far more judgmental of divorce than it is homosexuality. It says that a divorced woman should be stoned to death. And I don't think they mean, get her high. Now, I think a lot of the reason that I've kind of combined in my head these two ideas of kind of mobilizing people in politics and religion is that much of I think a lot of organizers on the left side of politics, they're sort of tone deaf. They spend a lot of time arguing things that nobody cares about. Basically, because so few people show up to vote, American politics is driven by saying things that encourage your supporters to show up or discouraging your opponent from showing up. If you can make the opponent care less about something, if you can take the wind out of their sails, then they're not going to be able, then that's how you win in politics, because everybody who organizes and basically the reason we have a status quo is because there's certain people who always show up to vote, and then there's some people who sometimes show up to vote, and then most people do not vote. And so to really affect change, we need to get more people who do not vote to do so. Because if those people start showing up, it'll throw off the formula for everything. This was as close as I've seen to that happening, even though it was just on a municipal level. There were people who lived outside of city limits who were hoping that because that it was a county-wide law and that they could vote on it. And I've tried to get involved with things that would get people more interested in politics, and this show is one of them. And it's just that people have so much going on with themselves that it's really hard to get them to care about this stuff. And I haven't heard anyone say it in a while, but baseball is supposed to be America's pastime. Well, it really should be politics. People should be talking about politics the way they talk about sports, and they don't. People don't care. It should be one of those things where you're kind of looked down upon for not having an opinion on, because that's the only way this stuff gets out there, because there's just so much out there that we just need more people to be involved. Because as much time as I spend thinking about this, there's always stuff on the ballot that I just don't know. Like on this vote, I forgot to look up the school board people. It's one of those things that I tend to not think about. Like it won't affect me because my kids are homeschooled, but I know it does affect me, and I always kick myself when I see that on there and I didn't look it up ahead of time. And this time I really didn't have an excuse because one of my friends got a Republican mailer and it said who they wanted on the board. And, I didn't think about this with school board members, but if there's bullying going on at a school and you have a bunch of people who think that homosexuality is a sin on the school board, they're probably going to be a little less likely to protect the LGBT students. It's that kind of thing where you don't even think about how it affects. You wouldn't think that it matters who's on there, but it really does. And unfortunately, people are so complex that you can't just you can't. It's hard to vote for someone. Well, it's hard to vote for a person because it's really difficult to understand the complexity of what makes them good at their job or not. And it's not always. There's things Democrats tend to do that drive me crazy. I just will vote for them over a Republican if it's a candidate that I don't like. I try to know who everyone is when I'm voting, but I'll default to Democrat before I'll vote for a Republican, and I'll usually vote for third party over either of them, as long as it's not the Constitution Party, because their name is misleading. Which brings me back around to I wanted to talking about the issue at hand. One thing that perplexes me about the religious argument, and why I throw the religious argument out, and why I say that it's just bigotry, is that I've noticed on these so-called religious bills that they seem to be very comfortable with lying to get their way. And again, lying, thou shalt not bear false witness. And so when you're telling people that this is laws over bathrooms, and it's really not, and you know better, or when you tell people that churches will have to perform gay marriages when it explicitly says in there, like the bathroom thing, I think that it could sort of be inferred or implied, but there's definitely a religious exemption in Soji. So that's the thing that really comes up. It's thou shalt not bear false witness, and they're explicit. They're blatantly lying to their congregations in order to get them to vote this way. And I even wonder if they lied to the extent to where they could be sued for libel, because they put these things in print. And I think that there's an argument, depending on how they worded certain things. I bet if we went through all their campaign materials, we would find that they committed libel on some of their ads, claiming that certain issues were in play when they were not. I don't think anybody's ever sued that way before. I don't know how viable it is, but it's kind of an interesting idea. I don't think anybody's ever tried that before. And I'm not a lawyer. I just the extent I know about the law is because I've run for legislature before, so so I've thought a lot about the law. I know people think that they can say what they want because of free speech. There's legal precedent. There are certain things on free speech where there are exceptions. One of them that we should talk a little bit about also is whether these churches should be able to retain their nonprofit status, because a lot of people were saying a preacher should be able to say, preacher has free speech, they should be able to say whatever they want on the pulpit. Here's the thing. A preacher has free speech, but unless he wants to pay God's taxes, he doesn't get to say what he thinks on the pulpit. He doesn't get to conflate his opinions with the opinions of God. I personally don't believe in God, so it wouldn't influence me in any way, but you're not supposed to do that if you don't want to pay taxes for your church. The reason churches do not pay taxes is because they are supposed to contribute to the common good. Basically, back during the Bush administration, there was some increases to faith-based initiatives, and a lot of people were upset about that, a lot of secular people. That's the whole reason why churches are not supposed to pay taxes, is because they already had the infrastructure to deal with a lot of this stuff. So they, in exchange for all the good they do, they were giving tax exemptions. Now, if I don't know a ton about tax code, but my understanding is that there are lots of nonprofit, or it might be non-for-profit organizations that part of their agreement with not getting taxed on the money they make is that they are not allowed to endorse candidates and whatnot. And these churches are skirting the law as close as possible. It's like they're trying to regulate people's lives instead of just leading by example. I have a lot of respect for Christians who just try to lead by example and show people how their life has benefited from living a good life, or a clean life, or whatever you want to call it, clean living or whatever. And I've had people say to me, oh, you might not believe, but you walk the path. While that's not true anymore. I appreciate people who have that attitude, that it's not the genuflecting that matters. It's, being genuine that matters.